cognizance of every farthing devoted to his cause. Or in other words, God pays attention to every little coin that is devoted to his cause of sharing good news. Now, I live in downtown Manila, Philippines. I've been there for the last 4 years. And as I was studying this topic in the stories of the Bible, how God pays attention to small things, Jesus says, he who is faithful in the small things is faithful in the great things. And these concepts, as I was running around, I get up early in the morning, like 4 or 5 in the morning, and I go running around the streets of Manila when it's safer, there's less traffic. And you've probably noticed this, maybe here in Tarlac, when you walk around, you will see from time to time little coins on the sidewalk or on the road. Have you seen that before? So after studying this topic, I decided to do an experiment. I started to pick up every coin that I found. And I brought with me this morning a pineapple can, and it's completely full of coins. I can't pour them all out. But this whole can is full of coins that I found on the streets of Manila. And this is not all. I can't carry all the coins. It would have to be a bigger bag than this. But these are all coins I picked up. It took me about a year to collect these coins. I'll share with you a few details. The best time of day to find the coins is around 5:30 in the morning to about 6:30 in the morning. Because that is when the sun is rising and it's at an angle that when you walk down the street, the angle of the sun will shine off the coin into your eye. It's easier to see it. During the middle of the day, it's a little bit more difficult. And also, the best place to find coins is where there are, of course, a lot of jeepneys or taxis. People getting in and out, and they're going to drop the coins. And so that's usually where I would find the coins. It's also interesting if there's a corner, like a sharp corner near MOA, the big mall, there's a sharp corner. And the jeepneys go around it so fast that if there's a loose coin on the car, it will fall off. It's really interesting. So that's where I found these coins. Now, what I did, I would come home every morning after collecting the coins, and I would ask people on their way back, I'd say, hey, look at this. I found these coins on the street. I want to ask you a question. And I would ask people, I would say, why do people drop these small coins and they don't pick them up? Where other people will walk by, they'll see the small coins and they won't pick them up. And every person always gave me the same answer. I want to ask you, what did they tell me? Why don't people pick up the small coins? Yeah, you said worthless. It's worthless. It's not worth much. Remember that idea. It is not worth very much. A few years ago, let's see this on. A few years ago, there was this new technology that was used as, I'll just make it simple this morning, called Bitcoin. Raise your hand, quick up and down, if you've ever heard of Bitcoin. Okay, so some of you don't need to know what it is. It's just basically like an investment in technology. That's the basic way to explain it. So Bitcoin, a few years ago, in September 2010, one Bitcoin was worth 3 pesos. So in 2010, you could pay 3 pesos. You could go online to these exchangers or these cryptocurrencies, and you could buy a Bitcoin for just 3 pesos. But in 2010, you didn't buy any Bitcoin because you either did not know what it was, or you thought it was worthless. You thought it had no worth. Well, if you were following the news, just a few years ago, in December of 2017, one Bitcoin exploded in value, and it was worth, in December of 2017, over 1 million pesos. 1 million pesos. Now just stop and think about that. If you bought one Bitcoin in 2010 with 3 pesos, 7 years later, you could go right to the bank, go in there and withdraw 1 million pesos. But you didn't do that, again, because you did not know it would be so valuable. Let me give you an example. If in September 2010, you got 3,000 pesos, you had 3,000 pesos, and I believe every person in this room, you could have, if you really wanted to, in 2010, you could have found 3,000 pesos. It's not that difficult to get access to 3,000 pesos. If you spent 3,000 pesos on Bitcoin, if you saved that money till 2017, you could have gone to the bank and withdrawn, guess how much? Over 1 billion pesos. Now stop and think about that. Have you ever wasted 3,000 pesos before? Maybe you bought something that wasn't very valuable, wish you wouldn't have spent 3,000 pesos like that. If you put 3,000 pesos into Bitcoin in 2010, you could have come out, you could have been a billionaire. Now I want you to stop and think about that. What could you have bought with 1 billion pesos? I mean, you could have so many cars, new houses, you could have bought brand new schools. I want to ask you a question. If you had 1 billion pesos, would you have given any of that, even a small portion, to evangelism and missions? Is that something that you think you would have done? Yes or no? Yes, right. Look at the table. Of course, you guys want to do that. That's something you would have done. Because you think in your mind, if I have so much, of course I would give some of that to support God's work. That would be a great idea. But we did not know, because you did not know the future. We did not know the future of what was going to happen to that investment. So I want to ask you a question on the topic of tithing. I want to ask you a question. How much does the Adventist Church receive in tithes every year? How much does it receive in tithe every year? So all over the world, there are 21 million Adventists, and I don't know if you know this, but there are so many Filipinos in the Adventist Church, over 1 million, that for every 100 Adventists worldwide, approximately 5 or 6 of those are Filipinos. So you make up, it's a small country, but you make up a huge percentage-wise of the church. Now, we know from statistics that every year the church receives about $2 billion in tithes, US dollars, or 100 billion pesos. Now, think about that. All of the schools, all of the pastors, all of the churches working all over the world, this is all funded by $2 billion, or 100 billion pesos. Now, I want you to use your mind. And if you get kind of sleepy, that's okay. You're free to stand up. Don't fall asleep. That's okay. I had a teacher in school, a professor, and he had to teach after lunch. He said, if you get tired in my class, just stand up. You can stand by the side. It's okay. So you don't offend me at all if you want to stand up. Because I want you to be thinking, I've been so blessed by this, and I want you to be blessed as well. If the church gives $2 billion, wouldn't it be great if that $2 billion, if God blessed us so much that we could double that to $4 billion? Wouldn't that be great? If 21 million Adventists around the world are able to have a worldwide church with $2 billion, how much more could we do with an additional $2 billion? I'll give you an example. If we doubled that, for example, to $4 billion, now check this out, just doubling it, you could hire, or you could send over 20,000 missionaries, and you could give them a monthly salary of 200,000 pesos every month. Now think about that. That's a lot of money. Would you be willing to go to China to learn Mandarin, to do Bible studies, if the church gave you 200,000 pesos every month? Yeah, that's a great incentive. All of a sudden it seems like an attractive idea. That's a tremendous amount of money. And that's only if they double tithe from 2 billion to 4 billion. All we're doing is doubling it. Now, keep the imagination going. We're going to triple it from 2 billion to 6 billion. From 2 billion, where we are now, to 6 billion. You could send out 40,000 missionaries and give them 200,000 pesos. I mean, this is crazy amounts of money. I don't know about you, but I really wish that God would bless our church so much that we had so many funds we could send out tens of thousands of missionaries and make their life comfortable and pay for everything they need to do God's work in these unreached areas of the world. That's what I want. I believe that's what you want as well, amen? I want to see that happen. Now, I want to ask you a question. We have 2 billion, doubled to 6 billion. I want to tell you the actual reality. Several years ago, from the years 2001 to about 2011, they did a study called the Global Tithe Index, and this was in conjunction with the GC Church headquarters in Ayos, here in the Philippines, and they researched all of the countries around the world and all the different economies and currencies and people and all these distribution of wages and all these things, and they asked the question, how much would the Adventist Church receive if all Adventists around the world were faithful tithe givers? Not offerings. Offerings, you're free to do with it what you want to help people. But tithe, that's God's holy money. If all Adventists around the world were faithful with just the tithe, how much would the church receive? Right now, we only get 2 billion. And we could have 20,000 missionaries a year with just 4 billion. Do you want to know how much the church would actually receive? Is this a number you're ready to see? Are you ready? Some of you don't look very interested. Check this out. Adventist Review, April 2012. The total tithe potential for 2010 was a whopping, how much? $14 billion. That same year, the Adventist Church received about $2 billion in tithe. Now do the math. 14 billion minus 2 billion is how much left over? That's 12 billion. Well, let's round it down, make it easier. 10 billion. Every year, Jesus blesses this church so much worldwide that we have well over $10 billion in tithe every year, and we're only giving just 2 of that $12 billion, $10 billion. That means that every year, last year, we could have sent out 20,000 missionaries, given them a $200,000 salary every month, who did not go, because the church did not have that money. And that's just 1 year. If you go back 10 years multiplied by 10, that's a whopping 100 billion, that's 50 trillion with a T, pesos. People today say, Andrew, when you talk about missions, don't worry, God will provide. God is going to provide. But the truth, the reality, we know from the statistics, we know from researching this issue, that God has already provided. It's already here. The funding, God is so loving, God is so kind, God is so merciful. He's already given all of the resources to finish the work. It's already here within the church. The problem is not with God, it is with us. Those resources are already here. An interesting statistic as I was studying this here is that outside of the Adventist Church, Barna Research says that among all born-again Christians, through their research, 9% contributed 1/10 or more of their income. Now stop and think about that. I remember I read that, I almost jumped out of my seat. I'm a former armed robber. I was a criminal. I was in prison. I was always stealing and robbing. So for me to join God's church and be a part of this work and become a Christian, I remember I read that. I was like, what? You are crazy. You mean to tell me that outside the Adventist church, in the Christian world out there, 90% of them do not return tithe? Only a small percentage of Christians actually return God's 10%. To me, that was shocking. It was like, wow, that is crazy. And I thought to myself, praise God. I'm so glad I'm an Adventist. We want Jesus to return. And for Jesus to return, this great commission has to be completed. And I'm so glad I belong to a church. We're not even close to that. I know that we are supporting God's work with everything that we have. I really believe that. Well, a few years ago, there was a research project published with the Adventist Statistics and Archives and Research, tithing practices among Seventh-day Adventists. Kind of a boring book, lots of graphs and charts and numbers, but I found it interesting. And they did this survey of United States, Brazil, England, Kenya, and Australia, mostly Western countries. They did this research, and they they found out these interesting tithe patterns of Adventists all over the world, and I'll just share with you 3 important bullet points. Number 1, Adventists worldwide make more money than 30 to 40 years ago, but they give less. It's very interesting. Over the last 40, 50 years, you can see Adventists all over the world, their income overall is rising. They're making more and more and more money. They're becoming more and more educated, more and more accomplished. But the amount that they're returning in tithe is getting less and less and less and less. Now that's fascinating, because we have data. This is so fascinating. We know God is blessing this church more and more and more. Every year, God is giving us more and more. And yet every year, people are giving less and less and less and less. That's crazy. I don't know about you, but I was shocked when I started reading that. 1/3 of active members return no tithe at all. Let's stop and think about that. This is not people who do not go to church. These are people who go to church every month and they return 0 amount of tithe. And this is why I brought the coins. The coins in this pineapple can represent, and I will be giving this as tithe, not an offering. I'm going to put this in the tithe envelope. Oh, I'm going to take the tithe envelope to the can. I'm going to give this to the church as tithe. And that is more tithe than is given by 1/3 of the world church. Let that sink into your mind. I picked up more tithe from the streets of Manila than is ever given by 1/3 of the world church. Isn't that amazing? That's astounding. There's a huge lesson to learn from this. We'll get there in just a minute. Just absolutely tremendous. Let's go to, and one more. 55% of Adventist church members do not return the full tithe. So many people in church, when it's time to give tithe, they'll give 2%, 3%, 6, 7, 8, or even 9%. But over half of the church will never give the 10%. Which is, to me, it's amazing. As a former armed robber, why would you go halfway? Why would you do it just partially? Why not just go the full 10%? But if you add 1/3 to 55%, that's 88%, and those are Western countries. It's worse in other areas of the world, especially South America and many parts of Africa and several countries here in Asia. Which means that we are no different than the evangelicals, Pentecostals, born-agains. We're no different than them. Only 9% of them return tithe, and the same amount in our church returns tithe. That's fascinating. Because the church is full of people. Every Sabbath we say, Jesus, all to thee, all to Jesus I surrender. We all sing that song, but only 10% actually surrender the tithe. Take my silver and my gold, not a what? Not a mite would I withhold. But we withhold from Jesus billions and billions in mites every year. This is crazy. I mean, we're singing songs that we don't practice. We're saying things in church that we don't believe. That's wild. And I wanted last night, one more quiz question for those who were paying attention last night. What was the story that I read from in the scripture last night that gave me hope? Do you remember? It was in the book of Matthew, chapter 19, the rich young ruler. I hope you brought your Bible this morning, because I'm going to show you something that I will bet you've never seen before. Matthew chapter 19. Say amen when you're there. If you don't have a Bible, please share with your friend or seat partner. Matthew chapter 19. Matthew chapter 19, verse 16. It's the story of the rich young ruler. Say amen when you're there. A lot of you are still looking at me. You're not looking at your Bible. Okay, out there, Matthew chapter 19, verse 16, the story of the what young man? The rich. This is a rich young man. He's wealthy. Probably more wealthy than we have ever been or ever will be. But the wealthy young man, he comes up to Jesus. He wants to follow them. Verse 20, continuing from our story last night. The young man says to Jesus, verse 20, all of these things I have kept from my youth. I've kept everything. I've kept all these commandments. what do I lack? What do I lack? Verse 21, Jesus says to him, if you want to be perfect, go, sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and then come and follow me. Let me read that again. Jesus said, if you want to be perfect, go sell what you have, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and then come follow me. Verse 22. This is the verse I want us to pay attention to. But when the young man heard that story, when he heard that saying, he went away what? He went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. As Christians, as Adventists, we read this story and we say, that's a nice story, but it doesn't apply to me because I'm not rich. I don't have the possessions that he does. I don't struggle with that. But we know from these statistics that we are just as enslaved to the power of wealth and money as that man was. In his time, he probably had millions, who knows, billions. He had a tremendous amount of wealth. And we read this story and say, of course, he was a rich young man, he was in love with his money, and he would not give up his money to follow Jesus. But 90% of our church today will not even surrender the 10% tithe. The power, we are just as enslaved to the power of wealth. We crave, there is something about money, there's something about these coins that has a power over our heart that 90% of Adventists still have not surrendered. There is a quote that is attributed to Martin Luther. He said there are 3 conversions in the Christian life. There is a conversion of the heart, there is a conversion of the mind, and then there's the conversion of the wallet. And he said it is the wallet that is the most difficult conversion. People can come to church and they can say, I surrender all, I believe in Jesus, I read the Bible and pray, but there's something about money, there's something about the things of this world that people just can't break away from. And this is important because the rich young ruler lost Jesus. He lost heaven. He lost everything because he wouldn't part from that one thing. He would not even surrender that. And this is important because the tithe, again, that's not offerings. You can use your offerings to do whatever you want. You're good. But the tithe, God said, that is holy. That is my personal property. That belongs to me. And I don't know about you, my friends, but I've been a thief, and I've stolen from people. And I would never go to that person's house, having stolen from them, and then expect to go into that house, to be welcomed there, and to enjoy a relationship with them. None of my victims would ever enjoy me having it in their house, because I stole from them. How can we believe that we are going to enjoy eternity with God in heaven, having withheld His goods while we were here, which were for the purpose of helping other people? I want to continue. Matthew chapter 19, coming up. For example, there are areas in the world where there are no Adventists, no Christians, no missionaries, no Bibles, no churches. In the area of China, there's a group called the Zaba people, and there is 0% Christians among them. It's a small group. They are Buddhists, and they worship, it's a type of Buddhism, kind of like, the best way to describe it is like a magical type Buddhism. They worship ghosts, they worship demons in the mountains. These are people in darkness. There are just no Christians. We talk of Jesus coming back a second time. There's no one there that's even told them that Jesus was here a first time. Here in the Philippines, you can see the name Jesus on a jeepney everywhere you go. But then there's nothing. There's nothing. If God wanted to, God can send an angel right now to the Zaba people. And He could share the gospel with the Zaba people right now and evangelize them in the next 30 minutes. God could do that. He has that power. But for some reason, God has never sent the angels to go. He's never sent the money and resources to the Zaba people. If God wanted to, God could send $10 billion to Pastor Diaz and have him just figure out what to do with that money. If God wanted to, He could send the money straight to the church and have them do that. But He does not do that. He could, but he does not. What God wills to do, what God wants to do, is God wants to bless the Zaba people through his church, through his missionaries, but he wants to do it not through Pastor Diaz, he wants to do it through you, each and every one of you. Now, I have never worked for the church. I've never received even 1 peso in tithe. I'm a lay person. I'm a brother just like you. But I talk about this because I've lived overseas. I've lived among Buddhists and Hindus and Muslims. I know what it is like to interact with people and say, Kun Ruta Prani Sumaika, do you know who Jesus is? And to hear them say, Kaiben Prani Su, who is Jesus? I know what it is like to live in these areas of the world, so I know what it is like knowing that we have so many resources to reach so many people, and they are not being reached when we have the resources to reach these people. I'll finish with this last illustration. I want to ask you if you know who are the richest people on the planet. This is an interesting question. I forgot to cover up number 6. So number 6 is a Mexican, Carlos Slim. He's worth about $64 billion. You want to know who number 5 is? Number 5 is Bernard. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. He's a French guy. He's made a lot of money. He's worth $76 billion. That's a lot of money. That's a tremendous amount of money. Number 4 is Warren Buffett. He's made $82 billion through investing. Now, the top 3 richest people in the world. You know who they are? Number 3, ready, is Bill Gates. He's $96.5 billion. $96.5 billion in Seattle, Washington. Actually, he lives just about an hour and a half away from my house, but he's never allowed me to go visit him. I don't know why. Number 3, Bill Gates. Number 2, I know you can tell me who's the top 2 richest people in the world. I heard someone say it. Starts with a B. Did I hear someone say it? Number 2 is Jeff Bezos. He's worth more than that now. He's making a tremendous amount of money. He's the owner of what company? Amazon. Yeah, Amazon.com. And now, here we go, drum roll. Do you know who is the number 1 richest person in the world? You ready? Here we are. Richest person in the world is Andrew Michell. Worth a whopping $47 gazillion. Do you know why? You did not buy Bitcoin because you did not know the future. You did not know that one day Bitcoin, though it was worthless, was going to boom, explode in value so that it was worth over 1 million pesos of that Bitcoin. If you had known that, don't you wish you could have gone back in time to 2010 if only to buy just 1 Bitcoin? Would you have done that? Suppose that we had a time machine and I could take you back to 2010 and you could only be there for 30 minutes. What would you do during that 30 minutes? Would you buy a Bitcoin? Yes or no? Yes. Would you buy only 1 Bitcoin? Oh no? Oh, all of a sudden you want more than 1. How many would you buy? You'd buy as many as you could. Because you know the value it would have. You did not know the future, so you did not invest. As Christians, God has given us a book, and He's told us the future. He says that in the future, I will make the soul of a human being like the gold of Ophir. In the future, the only thing that will be of value are the souls of men. And all the things of this world, all the gold and silver, all the Bitcoin, all the fancy cars and yachts, all the possessions of this world, when Jesus comes back, they will be worth than worthless. But you will have riches for eternity if you have invested in evangelism and missions. He told that young man, he said, I want you to have treasure in heaven. And that is a real treasure. It is not some sort of fantasy, airy-fairy